Welcome to the Transforming Lives panel podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sharmin Prince.
And I'm your other host, Mitzi Dadoun.
And before we continue, just join us in a brief moment of grounding, taking deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Take another deep breath in and hold that breath at the top. And then just let it go gently through your mouth. Hold it again. And take another deep breath in. And feel that breath, how beautiful it is. And as you exhale, let go of everything that didn't serve you today. Just let it go. Take another deep breath in. And hold it. And now let it go. And thank you for joining us in that brief breathing exercise. And today, on this episode, we have the pleasure of chatting with Dr. Orest Komarnyckyj, a remarkable individual who has transitioned from being an oral surgeon to becoming a successful podcaster. He calls himself the old guy at 70. And he is not only embracing his new role, but is also dedicated to helping older men create kick-ass lives for themselves and their loved ones. Dr. Orest, broadcasting from his vibrant home in Las Vegas, Nevada, is on a mission to mentor men through the complexities of life, drawing from his own wealth of experiences, both successes and lessons learned. With a lighthearted and edgy style, he tackles a variety of topics, often venturing into the uncomfortable, and leaves his guests and listeners surprised and entertained with his humor and candidness. Join us as we dive into a conversation with Dr. Orest, prepared for unexpected insights, a few laughs, and perhaps a reminder that it's never too late to pursue your passion and live a fulfilling life. Dr. Orest, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the gracious introduction.
You're welcome. And is there anything else you would like to add?
The only thing I'd add right now is that one of the things that I am doing is I am a men's life coach,
Okay.
and I work with men most of the time who are financially successful, who have issues in their relationships with their spouses, their kids, and fitness.
Okay. Well, we will talk since you started there. What led you into life coaching?
Uh, Somebody that I knew suggested, who knew me relatively well, suggested I do it. I've actually had several people tell me I should do this, and so I I started this about a couple of years ago, and it's been an interesting journey. I have conversations with men that they would never have with anyone else,
Hmm.
including their spouse.
Hmm.
And so it's sometimes they're brutal, sometimes people are crying, sometimes they're laughing. But my job is to sift out the bullshit and make sure that they're speaking honestly. The harder the obstacles are,
Hmm.
they're
Dr. Orest, wow. Wow. You have such an edgy approach with your clients. How is that received one. And secondly, for women, we have to maybe trust our doctor, our coach, our therapist before we open up. And it can take a few sessions, it can take months. What is the time frame with your clients?
Well, okay, so let me I think, Missy, you kind of asked this question earlier and I didn't really answer it. Maybe I started to, and then I get off track quite often, and I spend a lot of time talking. Uh, and I realize that. Um, my kids tell me that all the time. Uh, so the process is very simple. The process is, oh yeah, because we got off on the intimacy thing. The process is an analysis of where you are. Okay, very honest about where you are, because you need to know as a starting point, where you are in intimacy, where you are in terms of your fitness, your health, what you can do, what you can't do, to a certain extent, finances. I also spend some time on faith, that's kind of the hardest one to quantify, but that also is quantifiable. Um, and then once we know where you are and your relationship with your spouse spills over into your business.
Mm.
Okay. Your fitness spills over into your business. I've had men that are obese in my program, and I've looked at them and I go like, would you like to screw yourself? Do you think your wife finds you attractive with that big old belly in front of you? Yeah. So it's not a safe space, Missy.
But
But
you get them talking.
when I'm like that, they know I speak the truth. It's not deniable. I mean, my onboarding process is 2 hours. So we get into a lot of detail. But the first step is to find out, where are you? The next step is to find out what you want. And this is where Simon Sinek has it all wrong. You don't start with why. First, you find out where you are, then you find out what you want. And then you ask yourself, why do I want that? And if you don't have a good enough why for that what, you have the wrong what.
Wow. I love
When you
that. Repeat that. The where, what, why.
And if you don't, like I said, if you don't have the right, if you can't get a good why, you probably have the wrong what. And a lot of times this is around things that people think that they should do.
Mm.
Okay. Well, there are things that I should do that I don't want to do. I don't even pretend that I want to anymore. There are things, probably not a good idea that I have a cigar 2 or 3 times a week. I shouldn't do that. Well, I don't give a shit. I like my cigars. I like my vices. So I'm not going to say, oh, I'm not going to make up a why about what a low list. I know all that shit, but I don't want to. That's not what I want. And then the last thing is the how. And the how, you have to have a plan. But that plan at the same time has to be adjustable,
Mm.
because as you progress, you may see certain things are not working the way you thought they would. And so it has to be, you have to be able to pivot and do so by looking at the results. I mean, I'm going to be getting on a call here later on, where a gentleman wants to reach a certain target weight, and he's been on course to do that, but now he's going in the wrong direction. It happens all the time. I mean, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I start to do something and it just doesn't work out. And, I'm screwing it up. I'm weak. So So we need to figure out what he's doing to modify it and modify his approach to things. So your how needs to be malleable. And if people always people want to start with how, and they're screwed. They're screwed. They'll never get that. That's you see that at meetings sometimes where all these people are come to speaker's podium and they start asking how, and they're like, I could tell you how, but that doesn't make I can tell you you could get all the hows of how to ski by watching videos, but that's not going to make you a great skier. They'll just make you an expert watching videos on skiing, uh, which won't get you closer to what you want if that's what you want. So that's kind of that's the process. And then once we do that, then we settle on the hows and just keep track. Typically, my program is a 12-week program that we set goals that will expand where you are, but they're not going to be totally unrealistic goals that will only lead to frustration. And the other thing is like, no, you can't be anything you want. Okay. That's stupid when people say that to someone. I could practice basketball all day, 20 hours a day. I will never play in the NBA. Even when I was at the height of my athleticism, it wasn't going to happen. You could give me all this positive self-talk and affirmations and this and that and da, 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 da. It just ain't going to happen. It's the same thing. Like people say, like, "Oh, I want to be a billionaire." Well, you haven't even made $100,000 yet. Why don't you make $100,000 and then make your first million, and then move on from there before you start talking about wanting to be a billionaire? Because and it's usually somebody who's working a minimum wage job that thinks it's just a matter of luck.
Mhm.
That's the other one where I kind of go off. Sometimes I just blow it off. And sometimes people see you driving a nice car and they go, "Oh, you're lucky." And I look around, I look at him, and I go like, "What have you done in the last 6 months to improve who you are as a human being on this earth?"
Mm.
And usually, it's like silence. That's why you have a crappy life. That's the reality. You don't do anything to improve yourself as a human being. So again, no safe place. It's sometimes it's a wild ride. My wife sometimes just is used to it. She just goes, "Oh, okay, he's
Yep.
on high horse."
This is great. I have one other question, which I've seen sort of come up, and it's not something we've kind of gotten towards at all, which is the other aspect of sort of the guy who's been very career focused and he's now, retiring, and he was the chief engineer at somewhere and he had a lot of title and circumstances pomp, and he sort of felt, he had a certain vision of himself, and now he's retiring and it's like he's lost his identity and trying to find himself again. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect? Because I think there's probably a lot of men that is something that comes up for them. Or maybe
Well,
I'm wrong.
don't retire. I'm 72. Okay, I don't plan on retiring. And part of that is there was a study from Shell Oil Company uh, a while back that talks about what happens when dudes retire. They die. Okay, not just literally they die. And the younger they retire, the younger they die. So, and we had a friend who's very successful, had a uh, 8-figure exit from his business, and I think the first number was a six or something, so basically $60 million or whatever. So, we had a friend of mine. She said she also had a big exit from her business, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's my fuck you money. That's my money that I don't care what you think." But he played golf every day, and he was the most miserable person that I knew. As a matter of fact, he was so miserable I stopped hanging around with him because he was just constantly complaining, and then he wouldn't do anything to improve the condition of his life. Uh, but he'd always be asked. He'd always ask, and then he wouldn't follow. And so there's a term for that. It's called ask holes. They continually ask you for advice. And I've literally said this to people too. Like, will you stop fucking asking me the same question? You asked me that 6 months ago and you haven't done anything. Don't ask me again unless you're ready to commit to change. Again, it's kind of like, yeah, people, at some point, people need to take responsibility. But the retirement thing is a real issue. For a while there, we lived in a 55 and older community, and I hated it. I hated it because everyone there was half a step or a full step in God's waiting room. And the gym was the worst. I lift very heavy. I still lift very heavy. I mean, 100-pound dumbbells for bench press, things like that. So when I went into the gym and I would grunt at this 55 and over community, people were thinking you're having a heart attack. They'd be coming over and asking you, why don't you call 911? I go, get away from me. So now I go to like a regular gym where, first of all, I'm not the strongest person in that gym by no means. But I don't have every time I grunt, you don't have everyone coming over and trying to see you. I had, this one woman was yelling at me. I've got these heavy weights over my head, and lifting heavy weights is mental.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to be physically strong, but a lot of it is mental. Being the focus, the concentration, the form, everything. It's really mental. And she started yelling at me that I'm going to give myself a heart attack and this and that. And she's like 2 feet away from me. And I'm laying on my back in the bench press with these 100-pound dumbbells over my head. And first of all, I yell at her to get away from me. And I said, are you nuts? Are you nuts? Do you realize how much danger you put me in and yourself? If I drop these weights and they land on your foot, you'll never walk again. You'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. And I'm not going to drop these weights on myself and injure myself. So yeah, no, but a lot of times you get the retirement thing is really a bad thing for dudes. It's really a bad thing. Get involved in some civic organizations, things like that. But my wife used to sell companies, and that was one of the things that they found was that after a year or so, over a year ago, the people that sold the company were looking to buy a company because they were bored stiff and they needed that purpose.
Wow.
Now, if you hate your job, that's a whole nother ballgame because there's lots of people that hate their job. But if you love what you're doing, shit, why would you stop?
Yeah, you can just adjust for, maybe you're doing it 3 days a week versus 5 days a week, or mornings, and then doing your hobbies or other adventures or charity work or what have you in the afternoons, shifting it around or finding that second career as you did.
Dr. Orest, what are some of the misconceptions of aging for men?
I think the biggest one, again, I'm going to go back to this whole thing about testosterone and all the fallacies. And there's actually been a major study just came out in 2024 that talked about about all the things that we were told that, testosterone would call. The biggest thing is what most people don't realize is outside of all the physical benefits of maintaining muscle mass, all sorts of other things, testosterone is a monster antidepressant for men. And that's in my opinion. I'm not a physician, but that's been my experience, been the experience of men that I've helped get on testosterone. And when they have to get off for short periods of time, they hate it. They hate it. And so it is a monster antidepressant for men. It makes you more basically decisive. They have a can-do attitude. I think in some ways, I would say for me, my experience is that I feel younger.
Mm.
I don't feel like I'm 72. Now, sometimes my body tells me that I'm 72 when I get injured and things like that, or stuff happens. As you get older, sometimes stuff comes out of nowhere. And one of my mantras is every day is a battle to keep the decrepit old man out. And it happens. You see this in the gym. You see some guy, in the 60s, 70s, in the gym, really active. They vanish for a few months. Next thing you know, they come back and they're a shadow of who they were. My cardiologist was like that. When he came in, I hadn't seen him in 2 years. He came in, I'm looking at him going, what the fuck happened to you? Well, it turned out he had back surgery and life-threatening staph. They had to air vac him out of Las Vegas to USC in Los Angeles and things like that. So he was beat up physically. So that is probably one of the major things is to be really good about it. And stuff comes out, stuff comes out of nowhere. Um, so in January of 2022, it's a word that's bandied around, diverticulitis. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with what that is. Yeah, yeah. Basically, you can't shit. And so that's a problem. And I had several bouts of it, um, in the previous 2 years. And so I had to go and get it cut out. Now, what happens when that happens is that God gives you two ears, one nose, two eyes, one mouth, and one asshole. When you have the diverticulitis cut out, there's a surgeon who comes and separates your intestine from your rectum, and you shit out your stomach into a bag. Okay. So my morning consisted of waking up and shitting on myself for 2 hours. And that was from January to May. Now that's life altering. And my wife's an angel and, she cleaned up. It was amazing. But that's life altering. And it was the whole time that I was fighting that. Mentally, I had to work on making sure that mentally I was strong. And to a certain extent, it made we couldn't get the bag to stay on for a while. It took several weeks to find out a wound specialist that was able to show us how to keep the bag, so we could go out a little bit. I remember we were getting ready to dress to go out, and I looked at my shoes, and there was some shit on my shoes. Well, so much for that evening. And so life like that happens, but you have the whole point of keeping the decrepit old man out. You're not gonna stop getting old, but it's the decrepit part that you need to work on, and to never ever ever give in. I mean, there's some certain realities, but you just never really give in mentally.
May I ask how you overcame the diverticulitis? Because it's a common diagnosis now.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm saying common because I have had the experience and had the surgeries where they cut out a piece of my intestine. So thus I'm asking the question.
Yeah, basically, they did that, and then it was started in January, and then May they put me back together. Okay, so that was there was some relief knowing that it was essentially a temporary matter, and so we were able to deal with it knowing that. But it was trying. I'm facing another challenge now. Uh, I fainted a couple of times, and we can't figure out why. And so I went to go see a neurologist. I had a heart workup in December, and my cardiologist told me I was one of the healthiest patients in his practice. So I knew it wasn't that. And so I went to go see a neurologist. I had to go get an MRI and something called an MRA, where they actually look at the arteries in the back of your neck and the back of your head. And so we're going to get that on Friday. I go in that fucking tube. I hate MRIs. I'm getting claustrophobic. So they're going to give me Valium before I get there hour early, so I can take the Valium and and do that. But I don't like going to. I just and they said they couldn't do it with an open MRI. So,
As you said, so much of dealing with the aging process is keeping your mental acuity and your positive attitude and focusing on where you want to get to, not necessarily where you are right now. Like, as you said, when you had to go through that, you were lucky you knew that there was an end in sight. But some people, unfortunately, that becomes a permanent
case. Yeah.
And I would imagine in a situation like that, again, that could very much affect somebody's sex life. I mean, even if you mentally want to do it, if you're in physically that kind of a state, it would make it very difficult if either partner was in that situation.
Yeah. No, I mean, it definitely did. Definitely did. I mean, it's not that I didn't want to. I mean, with the amount of testosterone I take, I'm always at the ready. So, I've been, as I said, I've been optimized for over 25 years. So yes, even regardless of whatever, and guys are really different. Guys are really, I mean, anything could be going on. They're still ready for sex. It doesn't really. That's just the way we're built. And to a large extent, that's why I don't coach women, because I know that you have a whole different processing system that's very different than men's are. I I could probably not with a great result say half the stuff I do to men to women, but I don't think it produced a result that they want or I'm looking for. But when I say something to a guy, they know exactly
Yeah.
what I mean. There's no I don't have to go into a long detailed explanation unless they're in denial, and then like, come on, you know that this is what happens. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, stop lying to me.
The
Oh, it's almost up. Come on, dude, stop lying.
I have a question. Let's say there is a man listening to the podcast who feels stuck and is unsure about his life. What would you say to him?
To dude, I'd say, get on a call with me, uh, and get on a short call, and then we find out whether we go forward. And no matter where you are, your current status, even though it may be what you were working for a year ago, is now just average.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't know about you. I always want more. What I had last year and this year now, I've gotten used to it. I've accommodated. So I want more.
To wrap up, just some rapid questions. What was the last great book that you read?
Oh, God. Oh, I can tell you. I can tell you. I thought it was fascinating. The authorized biography of Elon Musk. Or as another person another book that I like to read is The Prince by Machiavelli. And, yeah, where he says no good deed goes unpunished.
Yep.
And I've seen that, especially if you're enabling.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite books that I read every 2 or 3 years. What would you like to leave with our listeners?
You are empowered to create the life that you want for yourself. And when you create that life for yourself, it impacts those that you love. And if you create a crappy life, guess what? You're gonna have a crappy impact on those that you love.
Thank
If you create a
you.
great life for yourself, then you're gonna impact your loved ones in a great way.
Thank you so much for joining us, Orest. This was really interesting and enlightening for two ladies to learn a lot more about what it's like on the other side, so to speak, and very enlightening. And thank you so much for taking the time, spending it with us. And I encourage everyone to listen to your podcast and get some more insight on some of these great topics.
I would encourage people to go to, like I said, if they want to find out more of me, go to www.thestandard.academy. That's my website, and it has a lot of information. You can access, get in contact with me through that website if you are so inclined to do so. And yeah,
Thank you so much. That's it. That's a wrap.